Today we're interviewing Michael Bastine, who is an Indigenous healer and famous author of the book Iroquois Supernatural, Talking Animals and Medicine People, written by Michael Bastine and Mason Winfield. Mike is a traveling lecturer on Native American issues. Every year he attends and gives presentations at the Peace Village in Lincoln, Vermont, and Wisdom Keepers in Council Grove, Kansas. Recently he was on a podcast called Edge of Unknown and talked about some of the issues and native prophecies that we will be talking about today. Michael was also in a film called Bury My Heart with Tonawanda. Asking some of the questions will be another Native American healer, John Volpe.
Hey, Mike.
John?
One of the things that, one of the reasons why we're doing this is I believe that there's people out there that really need to hear your side of what this whole virus and why it's happening. I really believe people need to really start to look at what you have to say about it.
So, all right. It's a fairly diverse and complex situation. It was handled incorrectly from the very beginning. The places where they noticed it was really being a major problem didn't shut down travel. And people who were leaving that area were going all around the world. And they may not have had the actual virus affecting them, but they were carrying the virus with them. And this is where it just spread to what they now call a pandemic, but it could have easily been contained, but it didn't, and we're at a place now where they seem to be really getting people upset. They're really not handling it well. It's good to exercise caution, but we can get into a lot of the reasons why it is what it is, but primarily we need to help people understand that most of society, most of the population, has very little direction in life, other than whatever their job may be, their employment. And when that is taken from them, when they can no longer go to work or follow a routine that they're accustomed to, they don't know what to do. And this is actually, in my opinion, it's a learning experience. It's something for the humans to know that this is actually something that the earth is allowing to happen because the humans have not treated the earth with the respect, and they still don't. And when you allow the water and the air to be contaminated to the levels of where it is right now, people are exposed to that contamination every single day. It degrades their general health. And here's where we're not getting a lot of the information that is not clear enough, where people who are being affected by this virus, they want to try to simplify it by saying the people who are being really hit hard by it have underlying health conditions. Well, the way they define an underlying health condition is not as accurate and in depth as it should be. If there's people who are vaping, smoking, using alcohol, any of the other types of, whether you want to call it medication, opioids. There's everything is in that area, which the humans have a tendency to overdo, and it degrades their general health. They may not be sick, but they're not healthy people. And trying to help people who don't see themselves as having an issue with lifestyle is a major part of how hard this will affect the individuals. And then you compound it by having these people with underlying health issues. Those are the ones that are going to really be affected by this. And this is the part of trying to say who needs to be protected or needs more to be more cautious with the way they do things in life. So now they're putting the generalizations out. Wash your hands, and this should be something that is done every day. But because people are so, I guess, out of touch with the way life needs to be lived and the way they should be living, well, some of the things we're seeing now, because this extended period of time that they're being, manufacturing is being shut down, traffic is much lighter. I just heard the other day, people in LA actually saw blue sky. And that was something unusual for them because they're used to that smog and that thing that just hangs over. And people are breathing that every day. And that's the part, when you start interfering with any part of your, seeing especially that this is a respiratory issue, they're breathing those contaminants every day. And what that tells me is their lungs are not healthy. They're making themselves more prone to having a worse response to this virus. And that's the kind of stuff that they're not bringing out to say you need to modify any of the behaviors and say try to get yourself on a routine that doesn't include harming yourself or making yourself ill. I know you, John, had mentioned earlier, if someone would have a response to this virus, if they were contracted the respiratory ailment, if having a belief system or some other means to be a part of recovery, that is an absolute necessity. In the native traditions, how medicine works, it's not just administering a medicine or a plant, or sometimes the use of feathers, sometimes the use of different herbs that are burned to use to kind of realign certain energies. There are various numerous things that can be done for assisting people who are having these issues. If you don't have a routine or a discipline, the way you live life, and you're just kind of going along in the mainstream with the way life says this is how you should do things, you're going to be affected by it. So I guess the best kind of advice or insights to give to people is, some people would call it meditation. Some people might do other forms of doing behavior or a practice that gets you more in tune, not only with yourself, but reconnecting with the natural world. And that's where all the real medicine, or what I refer to as the life force that exists, it's in nature. And people can help themselves by doing a practice that includes having gratitude. Just be grateful for what you have. You don't need a lot of things in this life to be grateful. And recognize that this life is a sacred journey. And they don't seem to get that. They don't understand that we're here for a purpose. And you find out or learn what your gift or your purpose in life is, and you start doing those behaviors. You start having something that broadens your horizon and says, well, you know what, I've heard certain things, and I think maybe I'm going to try some of these other practices to see if these things can actually help.
Well, you know, one of the things that we've been noticing is people's issues that they have seem to be escalating very quickly and building more and more. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that's actually a part of the prophecies, which it states that whatever you are kind of in life, and some people are not the highest functioning creatures on the planet, but wherever you are in that stage or this section of life, that will intensify, that will be enhanced. So if you're acting like a jerk, or you're behaving in a manner that is not good not only for yourself, but for the life around you, that will be enhanced. And it seems as if that's what's happening. So if you're exposed to that virus and you're just existing in a very diminished or low structure of life, your first chance or your first opportunity should be to try to better yourself. And by bettering yourself, it may mean improving your diet. It may mean a lot of things that you can do to actually help yourself. And I guess how I kind of have seen this with people who are having difficulties, they're just struggling to know that it's their responsibility, and no one can come by and do this for them. So when you start to see that they're having these issues, and I make a reference to what I say, they have a blind spot, and they can't even see how low functioning they really are, and the things that they're doing to themselves is normal. And you're saying, but this is because the blind spot is that they can't see it, and they don't want to see it, even if someone points it out to them. So when you're encountering this kind of situation, you kind of have to just wipe your hands and say, they won't even help themselves. How can I help? And they're so used to a system that might say, here, we'll do it for you. And they don't want to take any initiatives. They don't want to do anything on their own.
Mike, I was wondering if you could explain to the people why or what's coming as for prophecy, the way that Native people believe and has been shown as to what's coming and why we're going through this practice run.
Heading into what you're asking about for future times, we're within a few years. That's that close. That it has been noted that we would experiencing these types of things, and now, because they want to unify or tie the whole planet on so many levels, when things start to collapse. And people will say, well, what does that mean? Things, because they've hooked everything up to computers, because they want this system to be managed or run by non-living beings, this is, when that collapses, people are not going to know how to go through a day without electricity. They're not going to know how to find water. They're not going to know how to, what do I do with my freezer full of food that is going to spoil in a few days now. So they don't think far enough ahead to say, this is how we need to prep ourselves, and here's what we need to do. So unfortunately, when this next phase, once we're out of this pandemic thing, it's going to appear that things are going to settle or calm down. But it's an illusion that it's going to go back to a stable, and it's not. The situations are unfortunate that they tie stability into finances. And you look out in nature and you go, the robins are fine with what's going on, and the blue jays and all the other animals, they're doing what they're supposed to do, what they need to do. It's the humans that don't live life in accordance to prepping themselves or being ready to go through even a greater event than what this pandemic is. So the best advice is start seeking out the sources of information and people who say, I guess one of the greater teachers that I like to look to in more recent times is even like the dog whisperer. And he wants to keep telling everybody, calm and assertive. Because when you get those other energies involved and people get really rattled and scattered, they really struggle with the basics. And so the calmness comes from an understanding that we're all part of a greater experience here. And unfortunately, they want to look too much to the individual, and the individual, they can't do that much.
Mike, you talk about the prophecies. Maybe you could share with us what prophecies, whose prophecies these are.
Some are part of the Haudenosaunee people, have their prophecies here. The Hopi have theirs. Typically, and this is what Mad Bear had done, he did a comparative study. And without calling it a comparative study, he sought out the people who knew the prophecies. And what he saw is that there's a parallel, that they all had talked about life being good for a while, but as things start to intensify and the human's behavior starts to get outside of the guidelines of saying here's what is known or typically seen as normal behavior or typical, when the humans started pushing those boundaries out, the behavior is actually a catalyst. It's actually a trigger for these prophecies. So people want to know, well, what are the prophecies? And the prophecies basically said, if the human's behavior continues on this path, and this is kind of paraphrasing the Hopi, there were two paths. One path would lead to total destruction. And actually, it says all life would cease to exist on Earth and it would be void and vacant of life for quite some time. But they say the next life that would emerge would be ants coming out of the ground, and that life would have to start over. The other path on the Hopi prophecy says, we have gone to a certain point, and now we can't reverse that. And I believe that's where we are, but we're not on the path of total destruction, but we're on the path that says, because of your behavior, the earth and the rest of the life, the consciousness, wants the humans to do well, but the humans aren't listening to how to do well. So they're being influenced by politics, religion, finances, everything that can lead you to do things that are not considered good behavior. So the prophecies then say there would be a series of events. And it doesn't matter if you say the tsunamis, the earthquakes, the volcanic activity, the storms that are getting more intense. Those are all leading into and part of trying to give warnings on another level that the humans need to wake up. Hopefully, this event with the coronavirus is one of those events to help the humans wake up, to alter their behavior. Because what we're all hearing now is that the air and the water is improving because they've scaled back so much manufacturing. And those are good signs, because when the earth is healthy and the humans get healthier. So again, it ties into the prophecies where it's what we're doing. Basically, if the humans can't wake up to the fact that their behavior is the greatest influence to what is to come. And again, we start looking at some of the specifics, and I mentioned the storms and the earthquakes and those types of things. But there's one event that seems to be greater or a culmination of all of these, and that's coming up in the next few years. In 2023, I believe the solar cycle kicks in, and it seems with the way things are heading and the setting that we're in, this there's a reference in many of the prophecies which refer to what they call it is 3 days of darkness. Now, we can take that literally. I think if we thought how many ways could literally we would be in 3 days of darkness, one way is if the earth stopped rotating and there would be total darkness on one side of the planet. The other 3 days of darkness could be a metaphor that says the behavior is going to demonstrate through the humans their darkest behavior, their worst behavior during those 3 days. So because we can't really know for sure, we should be taking measures to say, this is serious. And this is going to happen. Do we want to take it to the extremes? Or do we want to try to diminish what the prophecies... And the prophecies, as I have always stated, they're like a sign on the side of the highway. And if a sign curves real sharp, you better start slowing down because the road bends. If you don't, you're not going to make that turn. That sign is kind of a prophecy that's telling you in advance, slow down, or you're not going to make that turn. The people who don't slow down the consequences are their own. They didn't listen to, and again, the sign, and there are signs, and the biblically it talks about signs, and so we're watching them. We see them. You see them. I see them. Nature is really it's in a tough place. They're being influenced and affected by the humans' bad behavior. So, again, we need to get people on board, and if we can't reverse or change the path that we're on, then we have to prepare to go through some difficult times. And I'm not saying become a survivalist and go arm yourself to the hilt and build some bunkers. And no, get yourself in line with this creation and acknowledge there's a higher power that is overseeing this, and we can't tell it do this or do that. We have to work within the structure that says, here, we gave you this place, take care of it. And if you can't and you don't, there are consequences. And the consequences are the things you're going to bring upon yourself. And they don't seem to get that. And there's certain provisions in some doctrines that say, well, you can be naughty and nasty and bad and then just ask for forgiveness. And then you're forgiven and you can go and repeat it and do it again. That's not how it works. And that's why it's key for people to understand some of these doctrines are not true. It's convenient. It makes you feel good at the end of the day. Say, yeah, I screwed my buddy over and I just asked for forgiveness and I'm good to go. And that's how they like to live life.
Yep.
And that's not how it works.
So is there some way that people can get a hold of you for concerns or questions, or how they can help themselves more?
There are, and I ran into this in 2011 when I did a program on Coast to Coast. And the way I handled it was not that they could contact me directly, because I really can't do that. It's more than I want to take on. But I had them, and I had the permission from Bear and Company. Inner Traditions is the publishing company that published the book Iroquois Supernatural. And I asked if it was okay for people to contact them to forward information to me, and it was done that way. Okay. And I haven't asked them recently, but I'm going to ride on that last request because it was done through Coast to Coast. And I don't have a website, and if I did, I wouldn't have the capabilities to handle the response that might be typical from something like this.
Okay.
But I guess I would say if they would contact Bear and Company and put in a request that one of the publications that they did and I co-authored with Mason, if that they could handle those things, and they have my contact information, so they would forward things to me because I still receive mailings from them.
Good.
So they could do that through Bear and Company.
Is there any last words you'd like to say?
Just that, you know, we feel for everybody, and we don't want to see life just come apart. We don't want to see people harmed. So we're asking just that they look at themselves and see what they may be able to do for themselves, and if they're still struggling, network and be careful, because the sad part is today there's so many deceivers. There's so many people out there who will claim you have to use money to achieve what we're talking about here. And you don't. You don't need money. You need to have the ability to first be able to help yourself, then second to say, what else can we do? What is it possible for us to be able to do? What I basically tell people is network. Find people who have similar ideals, people who think like you, people who want to live like the way you live, and network. Stay in touch with them. Help each other out and share information. And it's basically getting back to the creation, to being grateful for just having fresh air, just going out. I mean, I don't know how long I was out this morning, but just you close your eyes for a little while and you hear all the songbirds in the springtime. They're really getting things moving and helping life return. It's part of the life force. And the life force is, to me, it's the greatest gift that this creation has, and that the higher elements have given to the humans, and they walk by them every day. They don't even pay attention to it. So it's things like that. But no, I'm always available to, assist, or if someone has questions, try to lead them or direct them in a place to help themselves, and it works pretty well.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mike.
All right. Thank you, and thank Adrian and everyone doing this production. Thank you to them and to all my relations.
Yeah.